Love, Marriage, and Sex, Part 3. Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Today we seek to conclude this three-part series on the topic Love, Marriage, and Sex. The order of the title is worded deliberately, and so it stands to reason that we will close out on the matter of sex. What comes to your mind when you think of sex in the relation to the first two words, love and marriage? Let us get straight to the main issue on hand, sex in marriage. We understand that when God created man and woman based on Genesis 1, He told them they were ordered to be fruitful and multiply. First hint of sex. But it is when we come to Genesis 2 that things begin to be more specific. It is in this context that we see and hear more direct reference to sex without the actual word being mentioned. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Genesis 2 verse 24. Still, we don't know for sure that God is talking about sex in that classic statement about marriage. Well, in that case, come with me to the writings of Paul in the New Testament. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. You say food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. By His power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and He will raise us also. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a harlot? Certainly not. Or do you not know he who is joined to a harlot is one body with her? For the two, he says, shall become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. 1 Corinthians 6 verses 12 to 17. Aha! There is a lot of information in this one passage. Firstly, the writer makes the point that the body of the Christian should not be engaged in sexual immorality, and by immorality is meant any sexual activity that God does not approve of. Then he goes on to make the point that the Christian does not have the right to use his or her body to have sex with someone outside of marriage. And why? Because when you engage in any sexual activity with someone that you have been joined with that person, the two become one flesh. So now, let us look at the Genesis 2:24 passage with fresh understanding. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. Let's put that into perspective. Based on our arguments so far, we have seen very clearly that God does not give the Christian permission to have premarital sex, because when you do, you are joined to the person with whom you have already had sex. Because of that, God states very clearly that you should reserve sex for your marriage to the one you are going to be legally joined with in marriage. And once the couple are legally married and God recognizes that union, then sex is totally legitimate because you are now joined with one person. That is your spouse. Is that all? Well, what about extramarital sex? The first thing to remember is that if you engage in sex outside of your marriage, you are committing sexual immorality, and particularly adultery, which is one of the 10 commandments. In fact, in ancient Jewish doctrine, if someone commits adultery, they should be stoned to death. If a spouse commits adultery, then the other spouse is free to divorce the adulterer spouse because he has already broken the covenant of marriage, or stated another way, he has broken the bond of marriage. No longer are the two one flesh because the offender has broken the oneness of the union. Thirdly, let us talk about the matter of same-sex relation. If you follow the deliberate wording of Scripture, it is less likely to go wrong. In our case, when God talks about marriage, He speaks specifically of the man and the woman, not two men, not two women, not three persons, and so on. Marriage, as ordained by God and stated in Genesis 2 and verse 24, and again in Matthew 19 verses 4 to 6, involves a man and a woman. In Ephesians, the writer of that portion of the Bible stays in total agreement with God's blueprint of marriage by speaking specifically to the husband that he should love his wife with the highest and most consistent love, and that the wife be submissive only to her husband. So let us conclude the matter. God ordained marriage to be the only framework in which there can be sex. Sex before the marriage with whomever is wrong. Sex with someone apart from your spouse, that is called adultery, and it is wrong. Sex with someone of the same gender is wrong, because God fully intends for sex to be between a man and a woman who are married to each other. This is the word of the Lord. Irrefutable, incontestable, non-negotiable. Sex belongs in marriage and between the husband and the wife who waited until after the wedding to engage in that holy matrimonial activity called sex, created by God and for our pleasure and for the purposes of procreation.